Welcome into Mississippi State Live here on the Voice of College Football. Andrew Miller and Christian Ballard here on a Monday evening. Back after the short break. Hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas holiday. I had a great time with my family, and some more family came visiting in. So really enjoyable past few days. Obviously, it's still the holiday season because we have New Year's coming right up, which that is why this is going to be the only show on the channel this week, at least until Friday night, because Friday we will have a post game after Mississippi State plays Wake Forest in the Mayo Bowl, which of course is going to be the topic of discussion that we'll get into primarily here in today's episode. But back here on a Monday, we're going to give our preview for the Mayo Bowl. Also going to talk about coaching staff hires that were just made for Mississippi State. 3 new assistant coaches come into the fold for the Bulldogs. So we'll look at those moves and then dive into the bowl game, keys to victory, and I think an interesting topic of discussion: who could be some guys we look at to potentially break out for Mississippi State in this game. Trey Clark asking if we are calling in tonight. Not tonight. We're not going to do a call-in show. Going to be a couple weeks off without the call-in show, obviously, since we're not doing a late-night show. We'll have a call-in sometime next week, I would guess, would be the plan. Although, I mean, I didn't do it after the Egg Bowl. Maybe after the bowl game. I don't want to promise it because I teased it in the Egg Bowl and we didn't do it. But look, if I think it would be worthwhile to have a call-in option after the bowl game, maybe we get into that. But no call-in show for now. But yeah, we're also going to look at potential breakout players. Obviously, with the bowl games, the way they are structured now, all these players hitting the portal, all the guys that opt out, choose to go elsewhere, you find yourself in a situation in some of these bowl games where roster-wise, you're going to be relying on guys that maybe you haven't seen much of throughout the season, or even if it's guys who have played a lot, it's important to get an idea stepping into the offseason and stepping into the opening of the portal window, which does come open on January 2nd. What positions do you really need to hit the hardest? Do you have a guy on the roster that you are confident can take a step forward and be a big contributor for next season? So we're going to look at a few positions where we're going to look to see if there's a player that State might have potentially break out in this game. As you were tuning in, if you could leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are not already, and turn that notification bell on so you do know when we do go live. And if you could share the stream, tell your friends, all that wonderful, fun stuff, we would appreciate it. Christian, how was your Christmas?
It was pretty good. Got to spend it with mom and dad and the dogs, and yeah, it was good. I mean, it wasn't too big or anything, but it was good enough. Watch Christmas movies, drink some eggnog, pass out. You know, fun.
There you go. Hey, that's all you need. We had mostly just the main family household. My parents, my sisters, and my grandma. We got together for Christmas Day, and then we had more family come in, come up from Florida, come stay with us afterwards. The next day, I made a gumbo when I played golf. Went terribly, but had a good time over the weekend, all in all. And of course, we have the New Year's holiday coming up as well, so there's going to be a lot more fun, excitement, I guess, from a holiday season standpoint in these next couple of days. But part of that excitement does include Mississippi State football because you do have the Duke's Mayo Bowl Friday night, which, of course, that's going to be the main topic of discussion here in the episode. But we do need to get into some coaching staff news for Mississippi State because the Bulldogs made 3 assistant coach hires. We'll run through the first one kind of quickly here. That being the addition of Desmond Lindsay as an assistant wide receivers coach. A Mississippi native from Taylorsville, has coached in the state extensively from going back to his start as a wide receivers coach at MGCCC down in Perkinston, or if you're in my neck of the woods, we call Mississippi Gulf Coast, we call it Perk. Multiple stops at Southern Miss along the way. Was also at Memphis, Arkansas State. Most recently was the outside wide receivers coach at UTEP last season. Mississippi native, a guy who has recruited the state extensively, has plenty of those ties within the state, and a guy that has had some productive receivers, especially if you look at his time when he was at Southern Miss and at Arkansas State, some talented receivers that he was able to coach up. Not going to be the primary receivers coach for Mississippi State. This is just an assistant role, which these days, with the way that you're able to run these coaching staffs, you can basically have as many guys on staff as you want. And if you wanted to have an assistant coach for every single position that is not the actual position coach, you're able to. And it looks like Mississippi State is sort of trending towards doing that a little bit here. Obviously, Keevy Thompson as an assistant coach for the secondary was one of those moves made earlier. A couple other additions that we'll get into here. We'll see what type of roles that they hold. But I like the move. You get a Mississippi recruiter onto staff, which is a big part of things. Obviously, losing Chad Bumpus, who that was kind of, his role as a receivers coach was mostly being the Mississippi guy and getting the players within the state to come and commit to Mississippi State and have those ties to those players. Obviously, this guy's not stepping in and replacing Bumpus because you still are going to make a hire at receivers coach, but his role could handle some of those same duties when it comes to coaching players within this, recruiting players within the state of Mississippi. So a nice addition to the staff. Sticking with offense, and this is a move that I'm really excited about. Kevin Johns comes in as an assistant coach for the offensive side of the ball. Not an official role announced just yet, whether or not that's going to be as kind of what I was just talking about, just an assistant on staff, or whether or not he will have positional duties. But this is a guy that I think is really an outstanding hire for MSU. So Johns most recently was the quarterbacks coach at Oklahoma State this past season. Did have to take over play calling halfway through the season once Gundy was fired, and the then OC cannot believe I'm blanking on his name because he's an air raid guy, and I'm supposed to know those dudes. But the OC at the time got promoted to head coach and gave the play calling duties to Kevin Johns. But in 2024 was an offensive analyst at Oklahoma. Prior to that, it was like 13 years in a row of being an offensive coordinator at the FBS level. He was at Duke for a couple of years with Mike Elko. He was at Memphis under Mike Norvell, and also under Ryan Silverfield. He was at Western Michigan for a season. He was at Texas Tech for a season with Cliff Kingsbury. And he had a nice long run at Indiana for multiple years there, first as a co-OC and then becoming a full-time OC. And this is a guy that has had productive offenses every step of the way. Every time he has been an offensive coordinator, his offenses have been incredibly productive. You look at Duke, he did a great job with Riley Leonard. Duke went from being like the bottom scoring offense in the ACC to being the ACC's fifth best scoring offense in his first season there. Memphis called an outstanding offense during his 3 years there, worked with some really good quarterbacks in Brady White and then freshman Seth Hennigan. And again, Texas Tech, his Western Michigan offense was very, very good. His Indiana offenses, especially in 2015, was a very good unit. He's got ties to a lot of really good offensive minds with a time working with Seth Luttrell. I am blanking on the Kevin Wilson, the head coach at Indiana at the time, who is kind of a crappy coach, but Kevin Wilson is a guy that was an innovator in the sport when it comes to sort of developing the power spread offense. But worked alongside Seth Luttrell, who's off the air raid tree, with Cliff Kingsbury off the air raid tree, Mike Norvell, who again has some sort of that power spread option background. And then in 2024, got some experience kind of in the veer and shoot because while Jeff Lebby had left Oklahoma that season, OU kind of promoted from within and sort of kept a lot of what they were doing offensively, at least from a philosophical standpoint and terminology standpoint. A lot of that stayed the same. So he was introduced to some of the system that he's going to be coaching now with Lebby. He is a proven coach as an offensive coordinator, has a ton of really impressive ties to various systems, and has implemented all that into his offenses. He's had years where it's been a pass-happy, wide-open attack. He's had years where they've been heavy run. He's had dual-threat quarterbacks. He's had pocket passers, and he's had success no matter how he's done it. He's had running backs put up huge numbers, receivers put up huge numbers. He's got extensive work as a quarterbacks coach, extensive work as a wide receivers coach. And he is someone that back in 2023, when Mississippi State was hiring an offensive coordinator, I thought would have been an outstanding hire because he was someone that, the word had gotten out. State was ready to make a move away from the air raid, that Zach Arnett did not want to hire a guy who was an air raid OC to come in. He wanted someone that could transition the team away from that and sort of start running a different system, which that was a mistake that proved costly. But Kevin Johns was someone that I thought would have made a lot of sense because, as I mentioned, he has ties to the air raid, working alongside Seth Luttrell, working alongside Cliff Kingsbury. He had been in the system. He would have understood a lot of the terminology. He would have understood a lot of the concepts and how they like to run those things. And he could have taken those ideas and then meshed them into maybe more the direction Zach Arnett was imagining. And again, he was coming off a very good season in 2022 at Duke, and the work that he did there felt like a guy that would have been a really great hire for Mississippi State at the time as an offensive coordinator. So I have a lot of respect for this guy as an offensive mind in the sport. We're talking about him coming in as being an assistant coach for Mississippi State, potentially a position coach. We'll get to that here just in a sec. But kind of in the same way with Bush Hamden, who State hires, with a very different background than Levy, has been the OC before, been a quarterback's coach, been a receivers coach, well-respected, but not a guy who's coming in to call plays. But it's someone who can step in and bring ideas to the room, someone who could step in and bring some different philosophies that someone like Levy can trust to delegate to. Christian, I think this is a really smart move. You're getting a quality coach in the room, and even if he's not going to be a play caller, which he's not, Jeff Levy is going to call the plays, and State's not changing the offense. It's Jeff Levy's offense. But this feels like a really smart move to get another really smart offensive mind in the meeting rooms.
He's definitely made some good moves this week with these coaching hires. And, I think just being able to bring these guys in that have experience around college football, a little bit in the NFL, anytime you could get that at Mississippi State, really anywhere, that's huge. And, this is not Mississippi State who's going out trying to get the big names to be like the Alabama and Georgias of the world. This is a Mississippi State team that's trying to bounce back, that's trying to rebuild and try to put everything together to eventually get there, hopefully. And, you get the guys you need, and then ultimately, I think what State needs is these guys to work out, but also hopefully they stick around for a couple years and something you can build a foundation with under Jeff Levy.
Certainly. And look, I think what I like about this move specifically with Kevin Johns, and it goes with Bush Hamden as well, there's a level to this that reminds me of last season where State went and added Mike McIntyre and Paul Rhodes as analysts, guys who were longtime defensive coordinators and successful defensive coordinators at the not just FBS level, power conference level, but guys who had been power conference head coaches and had successful seasons as power conference head coaches, brought them into the room to work alongside Coleman Hutzler and ultimately be a guy who could be another voice in the room, give him some leadership, give him some ideas. And I know in the end, State's defense only improved slightly, fell apart in the half of the season, and you move on from Coleman Hutzler. And it was a move that ultimately had to happen. But early in the season, State's defense was playing better. We did see strides from State defensively. And I have to think having those veterans in the room in McIntyre and Paul Rhodes helped. These guys have not been head coaches when you talk about Kevin Johns and Bush Hamden, but they're guys who can step in and I think can kind of give some of that same boost to Levy, where he can get some different perspective on, maybe how to handle a certain player, a certain situation. Hey, is this a concept we could put in that would be beneficial for the team that we have? Or, hey, I coached guys like this at this previous stop. We did this with them and it worked real well. We did this with these guys and it didn't work well. And can you take those ideas? Or we ran into this defense at this point and we ran this concept and man, it was really effective. And we saw teams that like to do that. Having those different voices in the room who come from different backgrounds is very beneficial. And it's something I like quite a bit. And again, Kevin Johns is someone I believe could be an OC right now. I really do. And I'm a bit surprised that he's not. I was really surprised after Duke, he didn't get an OC job elsewhere. So to have him on staff as an offensive assistant, I think is a big deal. Now, the question is, what is the role going to be? Because Mississippi State still may have some shuffling from an assistant coach standpoint offensively. As I mentioned, they do not have a full-time wide receivers coach hired just yet. And frankly, we have not heard much of anything in terms of what direction State's ultimately going to go there. I know the receivers coach from Illinois, Stepp, that name was thrown around a lot. That's not happening. That was, and I know that's old news at this point. If you're a Mississippi State fan, that's like a week ago. It already kind of ruled that out. It wasn't going to happen, if not longer. I know there's other names that have been floated out there, but don't necessarily know if any of those are going to become candidates for state or not. Both Kevin Johns and Bush Hampton have coached receivers before. There's a possibility one of those guys could be a receivers coach for Mississippi State. I would be interested to see if that is the direction they choose to go. But those are guys who have done the job before. If you have to make one of those guys your receivers coach, you can. Quarterbacks coach is something that's come up some. Now, obviously, Matt Holisek is Mississippi State's quarterbacks coach, but there is a lot of rumblings that Holisek could be up for maybe an OC job at another program, or perhaps he's just looking to make a move. I don't know any of that for sure. I just know that's kind of been the tea leaves for a while now. Matt Holisek is someone that might not be a part of the staff next season. And I don't know if that's Jeff Levy forcing him out, or again, it could just be opportunities elsewhere. If that's the case, you need a quarterbacks coach. It was initially thought Hampton was going to be the guy working with quarterbacks. Kevin Johns has worked with quarterbacks too, and Kevin Johns has done a really good job working with quarterbacks. So that's a role he could potentially handle. I'm going to be really interested to see how they split this up, who handles what. But I do think this is a couple good additions to the staff. And if these guys end up having to be position coaches as well, I don't think that's a terrible thing. Getting guys who have been former coordinators to step in as position coaches, you could have some success there. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, because we do have one big move made with the defense. Mississippi State has hired as a defensive line coach Ty Warren from Rice, where he was the D-line coach this past season. This is a guy who is most well known for what he did as a player. Played at Texas A&M in the late 90s and early 2000s, and was twice an all Big 12 defensive lineman, and was inducted into the Texas A&M Sports Hall of Fame. He was a first-round draft pick in 2003 with the Patriots, where he went on to be a big-time player with the Patriots throughout his career. Played in 3 Super Bowls, winning 2 of them. Earned NFL All-Pro honors. Was a team captain for the New England Patriots. Was named to the Patriots All-Decade Team of the 2000s. This is a guy who had an outstanding career playing defense as a part of some of the best defenses the NFL has ever seen, with those 2000s Patriot defenses coached by Bill Belichick. So a guy who had a great career as a defensive lineman that is now sort of getting into coaching. And, he had like a short high school stint as a coach in the state of Texas, found his way into the NFL ranks as a volunteer assistant with the Lions before going to the USFL with the Houston Gamblers, and then the XFL with the Orlando Guardians. Gets into college football in the 2023 season at Stephen F. Austin in the FCS ranks. And look, their first year was not great. It was a poor season the first year. The next year, though, defensively, they took a massive step forward. He helped sign back-to-back top 10 classes at the FCS ranks, and their defense became one of the top units in the FCS with a defensive line that was creating tons of havoc, lots of tackles for loss, lots of sacks, shutting down opposing run games. They had a really strong defensive line with him coaching that unit. Going from year 1 to year 2, took a big step forward. He gets the opportunity to go and coach at Rice this past season. And look, from a production standpoint, Rice's D-line, I don't know if it really got all that better from where it was a season ago. It was kind of a mixed bag in terms of their overall performance. But this is a guy who is considered a solid up-and-comer within the industry. The question is going to be, well, before that, the big thing for State is, one, you're not getting a proven name. And I guess we haven't even hit the big part of this, which is that David Turner is no longer Mississippi State's D-line coach. I'm doing all this talk about the hire when we never officially talked about the fact that David Turner is not Mississippi State's defensive line coach going forward. I believe it was mentioned on this show. There was something that had been in the works for quite some time. It was expected Mississippi State was not going to have DT in that role moving forward. Now, whether or not it is a full retirement or if he's going to step down and do an off-field role, I don't know if that is yet finalized. But ultimately, David Turner is not going to be Mississippi State's defensive line coach, which is something that ultimately kind of needed to happen. And look, I was advocating for a change last season. David Turner was an outstanding D-line coach for many, many years in college football, including many years at Mississippi State. State's defensive line the past couple of years, not what it needs to be. both from a recruiting and development standpoint. They have not been good enough up front, and it was time for a change. So you go to get Ty Warren. Not a proven name by any means. Not a guy that's got a long track record of doing this at a high level from a coaching standpoint. Obviously, the highest of level as a player, but doing it as a player versus doing it as a coach is a different conversation. Don't know much about him as a recruiter, and what is that going to look like? I will say, though, I think there is something to be said. There's guys who are going to want to play for a guy who was a two-time Super Bowl champ and an NFL All-Pro at defensive line, and a guy who stuck around in the NFL, was a part of the Patriots defense for many years. That's a good selling point to players. And so much of recruiting these days does come down to spending the money and just going out and getting the guys. And I believe Mississippi State's going to be able to do that. I think State's going to have the money. Everybody's saying they're going to have the money, so I have to believe they're going to have the money. Can you get this guy to coach him up? And I think his track record suggests that that's someone guys will want to learn from. I know people would have liked to prove a name, but I think there's a chance for Ty Warren to be a really nice move for Mississippi State.
I think so too. You made a good point though about his track record, showing that he could be the guy that can coach this team up defensively. And, ultimately, he spent time in the NFL. He's a good player, with the Patriots and that whole dynasty, obviously. But I like to look at it from a perspective of you play the game, and then a lot of guys nowadays are kind of going up to the next level of coaching the game. And that's great. But how many times have we seen, and I'm not saying this is going to be the case here, but you always got to be careful when you hire and bring guys in saying, oh, he was an all pro, he was pro bowler, he was Super Bowl champion, he was this, he was that, he was a high draft pick. Look what he did in college. He's got a good football IQ. That all might be true. But you always got to be a little bit hesitant with these hires and just see how he can adapt. I think with all these coaching hires, I want to see how they adapt to Mississippi State and today's college football with the NIL, with the portal, and everything like that, and the new atmosphere that we're in.
All totally fair. And look, coaching at Rice is a very much different world. Coaching at the FCS level is a very much different world than stepping into the SEC.
True.
I think, look, this is something I talked about with the receivers coach. Possibilities. I just shook my camera significantly. Getting a proven name is going to be tough right now for Mississippi State at a lot of spots. It's going to be tough to get those proven names because there's uncertainty about Levy's future in Starkville. And I know this has mostly been a positive episode so far, and I'm not trying to turn it negative, but realistically, we don't know if Jeff Levy's going to be the head coach past next season. If Mississippi State does not have a good year next year, Mississippi State's going to be looking for a new head coach. It's as simple as that. Coaches recognize that, and obviously guys do not want to established coaches and guys who know they have options and could have other comparable, if not sometimes better options, are not going to want to leave those roles to go take a job where there's no guarantee you're going to be there past one more year. Now, when you're a young coach like Ty Warren, who obviously, again, this guy's a Super Bowl winner. It's not like he's a no-name or anything, but within the coaching profession, he is still very much an up-and-comer. Young coaches tend to move around a lot. They tend to not have much of a choice. You do move a lot as a young coach because as you continue to ascend and find better opportunities elsewhere, when you're the D-line coach of Rice, you were not going to turn down the opportunity to coach defensive line in the SEC. There's no doubt about that. You're taking that opportunity. I don't know if Ty Warren was the top choice, though. I would imagine there were probably bigger names you went after that told you, like, look, we're going to choose to go elsewhere. Or maybe Levy sees something with Ty Warren and is like, hey, man, I've heard from a lot of people. And look, he's a Texas guy, and Levy's got plenty of Texas connections. I'm sure he's reached out on that, and I'm sure Zach Arnett would have to have plenty of say in this as well. I imagine he's heard this guy has a chance to be a really special coach, and we want to bring this guy in, and he will make it happen. If that's the case, fantastic. It's a risk for sure. If State does not get significant improvement on the defensive line next season, this move is going to be brought into question. But there's upside. It's very much a high risk, high reward type move. I would have to think, though, Warren is someone that, again, being able to sell getting coached by a Super Bowl champion, all pro NFL defensive lineman, like that is a good selling point. Like that does carry some weight. Like, hey man, you can come get I can tell you I was a first round draft pick. I can tell you what it takes to get drafted in the first round. I can tell you what it takes to play in the NFL. I can tell you what it takes to not just play in the NFL, but to be a part of the greatest dynasty that the NFL has ever had and win at the highest level of the sport while playing for the greatest defensive mind the NFL has ever had. Being able to sell those things is going to be big for players, especially when so much of the decisions do come down to the dollar signs. And if Mississippi State is able to have the money to be competitive to go out for a lot of these players and these prospects, what is the edge then going to be? Well, the edge becomes pro development. Like, hey, we can offer you the same type of money that everybody else is going to be. We're going to be the ones, though, that get you to the next level. And look, again, there's still some risk there because Ty Warren hasn't shown that yet. Because he's been at Stephen F. Austin and Rice. He's not had, and he's only been doing this for a few seasons now. You know, if he had been doing it several years, you probably would have better examples of, hey man, look at this guy who went out and turned him into a big time player. We haven't seen that yet. I will say, as a recruiter, Rice this year, which he would be a big part of that, they signed some impressive defensive linemen. They signed some guys that had power conference offers and were able to get them to come to Rice. So I think that speaks well to Ty Warren as being someone that these guys would like to play for. So it's an interesting move. Again, high risk, high reward for sure. But I think it's a move that can work out for Mississippi State. I feel better with Zach Arnett leading the defense, right? I mean, there's that part of it as well. And at the end of the day, so much of it really just comes down to talent. Like, you got to get better players in. And if State does get better players in, which again, a lot of that is financial, I think you'll see more results. Moving into talking about the bowl game, Mississippi State will take on Wake Forest Friday night in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, January 2nd. I'm going to look really stupid here because I don't have the game time in front of me. Because I've lost track of when the game.
Isn't it like is it an 8:00 kick? Isn't it evening?
8:00 your time, 7:00 p.m. Central Time.
Yeah,
on ESPN. Again, that's Friday night out in Charlotte, where cowbells will not be allowed, unfortunately. But it is what it is. Where
8:00 Eastern. Yeah.
Whoever wins the game, the head coach will have mayo dumped on him. It's after the Pop-Tarts Bowl, this is about as good of a post game as you're going to get in bowl season. Seeing a coach have a tub of mayo dumped on them, and we're hoping that it's Jeff Lebby that gets to experience that. How can Mississippi State make sure Jeff Lebby is getting bathed in mayo afterwards? Let's look at the keys to victory against Wake Forest. And Christian, I'll turn to you first. I know you have a few of these. What's the first thing you're looking at as a key to victory for the Bulldogs?
Yeah, there's a couple things to kind of go into tonight with this game. They have met only one time in history. State won the only meeting back in 2011 in the Music City Bowl in Nashville, and it was a close game, 23-17. It was the fifth bowl game or bowl win in a row for Mississippi State, actually. If that's wrong, you could correct me, but at least as far as like appearances and winning the games. But anyway, I read up on this game. MVP of the game was a guy
Vic
by
Ballard.
the name of Vic. Yep, Vic Ballard. How about that last name? Really cool name there. Shout out to him. That's mine. 60-yard touchdown run in that game and a 72-yard touchdown run in the game. So there was a lot that went into that game. I get people want to bring up the past, but it's time to look at today's type of game. This is not 2011. This is 2025. And these are two different teams compared to 14 years ago. These are two different programs. These are teams that I don't really know too much as far as what the expectations were for Wake Forest this year. But we definitely had talked a lot this offseason, Andrew and I, about Mississippi State and how you just want to try to get to a bowl game. Well, they went 5-7. They got the invitation, and now they're here. So now you try to win the bowl game. Talking about Wake Forest, real quick, 8-4 regular season, 4 losses in ACC play, 3 of the 4 were by more than one possession, including a loss to Duke on rivalry weekend. Robbie Ashford's the key guy for me that stands out. Former Auburn quarterback. I'm trying to think. I think he went somewhere else before Wake Forest. I could be wrong, but
Started at Oregon, transferred to Auburn, then transferred to South Carolina before Wake Forest. So he's on
that's
his
where it
fourth
was.
school.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think he's a terrible player. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. It just, hasn't been the best of luck. Just finding the right fit. Jeff Lebby, I had heard a little bit from him this week, and he had a couple things to say on Ashford. He said we've got to have great rush integrity with our lane, make sure we bottle him up and get him on the ground when we can. Overall, just he's been their go-to guy, and he's averaged about 200 yards passing on multiple occasions. He's only missed 2 games, maybe 3. I could be wrong. I don't know, but overall, look, this offense for Wake Forest has really taken a step forward. And I think with that being said, you get into this game, and we'll talk about our keys to victory and everything. But I think this is going to have to be one of those games where the defense shows up for Mississippi State.
Well, to start with the keys to victory, and you talked about Robbie Ashford, and I think that is a starting point. I think for State, a big thing is going to just be containing him.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big things with Wake Forest that was talked about is obviously their leading rusher in Damon Claiborne at running back, best offensive player by far, not going to be playing in this game, at least not expected to. Unless there's been some sort of an update that he will be playing. Everything we have heard is suggested he will be opting out in his preparation for the NFL draft. That's a 900-yard rusher, over 5 yards per carry, 10 touchdowns. Really good player. They're also going to be down their top receiver in Chris Barnes, who had 39 catches for 547 yards, 3 scores. Another receiver who was a big part of things, and Micah Mays, who was a big play threat, going to be transferring, not going to be playing in this game. So they're losing some key weapons in that offensive game, which puts more pressure on Ashford to be able to make plays, especially in the run game is a big part of it. Because when you look at from a rushing standpoint, Damon Claiborne ran it 179 times. Robbie Ashford ran it 116 for 504 and 7 touchdowns. The next highest carry is Ty Clark at 58 carries. So they have no one else who has been getting touches in the run game in the way that Damon Claiborne and then Robbie Ashford were. Bulldog, Mississippi, evening to you. So that puts more pressure on Ashford to use his legs in this game and be a big part of things. Also with Ashford, I mean, sometimes with the quarterback, there's always the risk of, do you really want to run him that much and risk injury, all that kind of stuff. Wake Forest does have a capable backup in Purdy, their backup quarterback. But Ashford, one, his legs are his best attribute. If you're not going to let him run a lot, that's hurting their chances. 2, this is his final college game, and it's probably his final football game. I don't think this is a guy who's got an opportunity in football after this game, and not to take a shot at him. But this is going to be it for him. Bulldog, we actually talked a lot about the Kevin Johns hire earlier in the episode. So if you go back and check that out once we're done, we'll get deep into that. But, now looking at the bowl game, so with Ashford, I think his legs are going to be a big factor in this game. They're going to run him a lot. I think they're going to have to get their run game going. And look, Ty Clark can get some carries for sure to balance that out. But I won't be surprised if Robbie Ashford is the leader in terms of the number of carries. That means for State, you're going to have to do a good job containing him, which is going to put a lot of pressure on that linebacker spot. Guys like Jalen Smith, Tyler Lockhart, who I'm hoping to see have a big game in this one, Darian Gillette, Zachary Tillman, those guys are going to be key, especially because when you look at the safety room, typically you would have Isaac Smith play a bit of a role there. Well, Isaac Smith is getting surgery. He's not going to be available in this game. Tony Mitchell's transferring. And some of your other safeties are more, coverage guys down the field, although Manning obviously can be a guy that gets involved. I wouldn't be surprised if Jerron Manning plays a little bit more like a box safety in this game, so maybe he could factor in. You're not going to be able to let him beat you with his legs, because I think that's going to have to be a big part of their offense, especially with their receiving core taking a hit. The other part of this, and it's Levy talked about rush lane integrity, as Christian brought up a few minutes ago. When you have a guy who's able to run like that, so often it's about creating with his legs in the scramble drill, both in terms of picking up yardage, but also getting out of the pocket and waiting for a guy to get open downfield. I think If you keep Robbie Ashford within the pocket, I don't think he's all that comfortable because he's not a super accurate passer. He's not a guy that's going to be great working through reads. If he can be comfortable and fire to his first guy, he can do okay. But if you force him into the pocket and don't let him get out and create, it becomes tougher for him to have a lot of success. So containing Ashford's going to be a big part of it. I think if you take away his playmaking ability, which is sort of the best thing he has going for him, Wake's offense may not have much to lean on in this football game.
Yeah, I feel like with Ashford, I feel like he just is Wake Forest offense at this point. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from,
With
you
Claiborne
know,
out, he kind of is, yeah.
yes, with Claiborne out, he is. And again, that's not to say like, oh, he's going to be the only guy on the field. Obviously, you're going to have 11 guys in the picture, whatever. You're going to have receivers out there, and maybe guys step up. Cool, that's great. But he's that guy that is in a position where I think he knows going into this game this week, he has to do it on his own. Now he's going to trust and try to trust on these teammates around him that I'm going to be honest, I don't know who they are because I haven't really paid much attention to Wake Forest this year as anybody else. Let's just be real. But again, I mean, it's not like you have Robbie Ashford and then some big time playmakers. I'm not saying they're terrible or anything. I'm not trying to diss them. I'm just saying this is not like Mississippi State's going up against like we had this season, Ole Miss or Georgia or Texas or any of the teams we had to play earlier in the year.
Yeah, and look, they do have a couple talented receivers who are going to be back, but their most talented guys in the receiving core are transferring out. And again, so much of their offense really came down to Claiborne carrying the load. So without on the field, it puts all the more pressure on Ashford. If you just let him run around and scramble and make plays with his legs, it could be a long day for State's defense. You've got to contain him. Christian, did you have like a big key to victory that you were looking at least as your top one?
Yeah, I came up with 3 keys to victory. The main one, or at least the first one listed I have is I think for State, they need to take every advantage they can to get in the end zone. There's a lot of games this year for Wake Forest where they won because of their defense and holding teams on 3rd and long. So obviously their defense is going to play a huge factor in this game. But if you could contain that and you can find ways to make big plays downfield or even just get in the red zone and then score. I mean, look, if it ends up we got to kick some field goals to take the lead or maybe it's a special teams type of game, whatever, cool. But that's one of my keys to victory. Take every advantage you can to get in the end zone if you can. You want me to
Well,
keep going or you want to just build off that?
we'll go back and forth. I'll play off of that
Okay.
because I do think
Okay.
there's a point to be made. You talk about Wake Forest's defense, and that's been a good unit this season. That has been a strength for Wake Forest, only giving up 21.5 points per game, holding teams to about 322 yards per game, one of the better defenses in the ACC, a unit that had outstanding performances against some really good offenses this season. It is a good defense from Wake Forest that is going to mostly be at full strength in this game. I think the only loss defensively that they have, as far as I understand, is like a backup defensive lineman who was a good player but was not one of their top guys. They've got a good group with a couple all ACC performers in the secondary, a really good linebacker. Langston Hardy at defensive end is a guy that could be a big problem for State to deal with. That's a very talented group that's going to be able to put a lot of challenges. So you're right. When you do get those opportunities to take advantage, you have to. And a big thing for State, that I think is a key, make Wake Forest pay for their aggressiveness. This is a group that wants to attack. The way that they're going to send pressure, the way that they're going to try to disguise pressure, the way they're going to disguise coverage, the way they're going to rotate their safeties down. And, we'll really do a lot with rotating safeties and bringing safeties flying down to the box because they are trying so hard to make those tackles either in the backfield or behind the line of scrimmage. When you get an aggressive group like that, obviously they can force a lot of negative plays, and that can be difficult to deal with. But you can also potentially hit big plays against them. Now, to Wake Forest's credit, they have been good at preventing big plays this season. They've not given up a lot of big plays. So it's not necessarily even about hitting the big plays. It is, if you're Mississippi State, you find ways to challenge them. And if they make a mistake, get somebody out of position, you take advantage. And I will say, what do they look like facing receivers that are as fast as Brennan Thompson and Anthony Evans, right? If you get one of those safeties rotating at the wrong time against that group, it could be lights out. I also think Kamario Taylor, his playmaking ability, when you look at Wake Forest and the aggressiveness they're going to play with, if they try to send some exotic pressure, Kamario is the type of guy that can make one or two guys miss. And then if they're bringing a bunch of pressure and those guys don't get Kamario to the ground, then Camario's taken off for a big gain down the field running the football. So I think State's big thing here on offense, take advantage when Wake Forest is aggressive. They're going to try to throw a lot at you. They're going to try to create confusion. Look, Kamario Taylor's going to have to be really good in this game. I talked about a lot in the last episode when we broke down Wake Forest. The thing that excites me the most for this game from a developmental standpoint for Kamario Taylor is that Wake Forest is a team that is going to throw a lot of looks and a lot of disguise at him. So for him to get introduced to that and get a start under his belt, look, even if it goes poorly, the fact that he gets to, hey, I've seen that. I've gone up against a team that's going to throw a bunch of different looks at me, and how was I able to handle it? That's going to be a big thing for him going forward. So that's something I'm looking at in this game. What's the next key to victory that you have?
Next key to victory I have for Mississippi State, I think staying on the field offensively, not for like the entire game, but I think because of how good and dangerous Robbie Ashford and company on Wake Forest side can be, you want to keep them on the bench. You want to hit the chunk plays. You want to hit big explosive plays, and you want to hope to get in the end zone probably pretty quickly at times. But get some chunk, what I like to call chunk plays, man. Just, get a couple yards here or there, eat up the clock, keep Wake Forest, kind of sweating defensively, and just go out there and just kind of do your thing on offense. I think just keeping time of possession, getting a couple extra yards here or there on some key plays, ultimately just kind of putting up numbers on the board.
I think that's all definitely fair and protecting the football for sure. And taking advantage of the opportunities that you get. Last big key for me is going to be making those stops in the red zone. Look within the ACC when it comes to red zone offense. Wake Forest was dead last, scoring on 74%, 74.4% of their red zone possessions. They were second to last in red zone touchdown percentage at less than 49%. Less than half the time that Wake Forest gets in the red zone, they've scored touchdowns. State's defense is going to have to hold strong. And look, Wake Forest is a team that I don't know how much they're going to be consistently moving the ball, but what we do know is when they get down to the red zone, they don't convert well. And a lot of that is because, the field constricts in those spots. And, Ashford, his legs can be a roll, but you don't have the spacing to take advantage of there. And I think it hurts him even more with Damon Claiborne out because that's someone that can create in those situations where you don't have the space to work with. And you're kind of leaning on a running back. Hey, man, you just got to go make a play. You're going to have to bowl through a couple guys. They may not have that player in this game. So I think this is going to be big for State. If Wake Forest does move the football, you got to hold strong in the red zone. Definitely. And I'll be honest, I'm not thinking I'm playing overly aggressive against Wake. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't try to take away the run game primarily because I think they're going to want to run the football. I don't want to give them light boxes to run it with, and especially a light box to run with when you consider they've got a dual threat quarterback in Robbie Ashford. But I don't know if I'm sending a ton of pressure. I don't know if I'm trying to change up a whole lot of things. I'm mostly going to try to keep Wake Forest in front of me because I don't think that's an offense that you can count on consistently moving the football, and I definitely wouldn't trust them to be able to score down in the red zone. We do have a quick question here from Bulldog Mississippi. Do they heat the mayonnaise up before they pour it on folks?
I hope not. That would hurt. Maybe.
Warm mayonnaise. Imagine warm mayonnaise being dumped on you. I mean, I hate
just the thought of warm mayonnaise, period. Like, I need that stuff in the fridge, bro.
I need it none, but warm mayo is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
I mean, mayonnaise is disgusting, but warm mayo especially would be sickening. I hope it is freezing cold I feel like the colder it is, the less you would assume that it is Mayo, and it just you deal with it.
Well, then keep the lid off or so. It's supposed to be like 47 degrees over there in Charlotte when this game kicks off. So
That is true.
maybe
It's
you
going to be a cool
let
game.
it be a little cool out there and kind of cool off that Mayo.
Just straight cold mayonnaise would be chunky. Yeah, but it bounces off. The texture is not the problem for me. It's the idea of the smell of warm mayo. Like that's
No, I'm gonna tell you, I got to bring this up. So I think the grossest thing about this bowl game is the crap that they're dipping in mayo in the booth instead of calling a football game for half the game. Like, oh, we got like I think a couple years ago I was watching the Mayo Bowl and I'm trying to remember who won it. Oh God, I don't remember, but they were like dipping Oreos and crap in that. Like y'all are sick. I mean, look, I hope I make it big time at Fox or ESPN or something. I ain't dipping. Look, mayonnaise is for sandwiches for me, and maybe a burger or whatever. Okay, cool. That's about it, bro. I ain't. There's nothing you can really dip in mayo that's gonna be delicious.
I would have to agree. Did you have a final key to victory that you want to hit on?
Let me go through my notes here. No, I really just came up with the three keys. Just kind of recap, every advantage you can, get in the end zone, um, big plays, hit them early in the game, and then kill the time of possession with chunk plays, man, and just eat it up. Those are my keys to victory. Those three, and I think Mississippi State could handle this game pretty well.
Definitely would have to agree. Final thing we're going to talk about. Actually, it's not the final thing. I forgot there was something Christian wanted to do to end the show, so we'll get to that in a sec. But we do want to talk about players that we think we could see have potentially breakout performances for Mississippi State. And it's not even so much projecting breakout performances as it is. These are guys I think if you're State, you would love to see a good game from them. You would love to see guys step in and have a big role. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be any one of these specific guys, but I think these are ones who are prime candidates to. I talked about earlier, one of the big things when you look at with a bowl game like this is the fact that it's an opportunity for young faces, or maybe not even young players, just it's a chance for guys to shine and give you a reason to believe that, hey, next season, that could be a key foundational piece. And look, the most obvious is Kamario Taylor, right? This is a chance for Kamario Taylor to put himself on the map. If Kamario Taylor goes out and has a big game in the Mayo Bowl and leads Mississippi State to a win while making some electrifying plays along the way, like there will be some offseason buzz around Mississippi State because there's going to be a lot of people saying, hey, man, Mississippi State's got a dude at quarterback. Like Kamario Taylor looks like he could be special. That's a guy to be excited about in the SEC next year. Like this is a chance to be a showcase game for Kamario Taylor. But it is also a game that is an opportunity for other guys on the roster who are not going to get the same national pub to show within the Mississippi State side of things with the MSU bubble, hey, you got something here. So I've got 5 players that I wanted to talk about briefly. And I'll start with a guy that I was pretty critical of throughout the season. Left tackle Javen James. So Javen did not have a great season for State as a tackle. He was kind of thrust into a role that he was not supposed to have, to be fair to him. It was supposed to be Albert Reese and Blake Steen as the bookends for State up front of the offensive line. Well, Blake Steen goes down with injury in the first half of the season opener, done for the year. Albert Reese gets banged up multiple times throughout the season. So Javen James had to play a bigger role this year and had to become a starter for Mississippi State and took his lumps for sure in a lot of different ways. He's going up against a really good defensive end in Langston Hardy in this game. I would love to see him go out and just have a perfect game at left tackle. And I'm not saying if you're Mississippi State, you don't still go after multiple tackles in the portal. You do. But if Javen James could go out and have a really good performance in this game, that would at least be a start towards like, hey, man, he ended the year strong, and maybe you feel good going into next year. Could he start at one of the tackle spots for you potentially? Or if he's the number 3 option, could you be in a fine spot? Sure. So I really want to see him protect. But look, top to bottom, State's offensive line, Christian, for as bad as they were all year. And I know, look, some of the guys in this game you're not going to have back. It would certainly be nice to go into the offseason with State's O-line having a good game against a pretty good Wake Forest defensive front.
No doubt, especially if you have a couple guys rotate in there and it hasn't been in fact, we've talked about it a couple times, man. It's been the weakness of the offense, probably the weakness of the team. It's been just the consistency of the offensive line. I don't wanna say that it's been terrible or anything. I mean, it's good at times, it's bad at times, it's good at times, and then it's a whatever type of game for it, but I think receivers, running back, defense. I mean, there's a lot of positions that could have a really big game against Wake Forest that could catapult into 2026 big time, and it give us really good talking points in the off season for sure. But I think offensive line's got to be at the top of that list.
Looking at some of those other positions, you talked about receiver. I want Aiden Williams to have his best game of the year. I want to see Aiden Williams go out and haul in a couple big receptions down the field in this game. Aiden Williams obviously was a big-time get for State in the portal this past season. The guy who was a former, top receiver within the state of Mississippi goes to Ole Miss. All this talk, multiple seasons of what he was doing in the offseason and how he was going to be a breakout player for the Rebels, and it just never really materialized. Comes to Mississippi State, and again, some of the same hype. He had a massive spring. That spring game, Aiden Williams was the star of the spring game, not named Kamario Taylor. But specifically, Kamario Taylor and Aiden Williams had a great connection in that game, and it made you feel good about Aiden Williams being a guy that could have a really big year for State. As the season went along, he did take the starting job from Jordan Mosley, and he was more consistent out there. 19 catches for 222 yards. That was the season. 19 for 222, no touchdowns. I don't know if he had a completion, a reception longer than 15 yards. He didn't have any explosive plays this season. And that's a guy who had flashed explosive play potential in the spring and even at Ole Miss. I want to see Aiden Williams have a big day. I want to see, can he be a guy that going into what will be his final year of college football? He is a senior next season. Does Mississippi State feel confident they have got a starter outside at receiver in Aiden Williams who could be a big-time player for them? You need to see it. You need to see that. And receiver is going to be a spot State has to address in the offseason. I tend to believe so. Even if you get Brendan Thompson back, I would think you want to go out and add at least one high-level guy. But if Aiden Williams can have a big performance in this bowl game, that would be a step towards, hey, we feel good about this going forward. And look, to be fair, maybe he's able to rekindle some of what he had with Kamario Taylor in the spring. When Aiden Williams was running backup at the time, Kamario Taylor's backup, maybe those two had a connection at the time that was a little different, that maybe got lost along the way with during the season. Maybe you can bring that back. But I would love to see Aiden Williams or any of these receivers step forward and have a big game. Next spot I'm going to look at, I'll stick it with the receiving core. I want to see if tight end Sam West could make some impressive plays here. Now, look, Sam West, 4 catches, 35 yards, did have a touchdown against Texas on a good route. He didn't do anything spectacular throughout the season. But State's losing Seydou Traore next year. They're losing Max Reese. They're losing Cam Ball. They're having a couple other guys transfer out of the program at the tight end position. Tight end is going to be a spot for Mississippi State next year that's going to look very, very different from what it did this year. And I think they're going to have to go out and add some pieces in the tight end room. Now, I do know Zayon Cotton is going to be with the team during spring practices during bowl practices, which gives him an opportunity to sort of start learning the system and at least show what he has available to him from a talent standpoint. But look, he's not a guy that's going to be able to step in and play, as he is not a part of the roster officially. Can Sam West go out and have a good bowl game? And look, Kamario Taylor's still going to be the lead guy. He's going to be the focal, not Kamario Taylor, sorry. Seydou Traore is still going to be the lead guy at tight end. He's going to be the focal point, especially his send-off. But I would like to see Sam West make a few plays at tight end. Give us reason to believe we've got a guy at that spot. My other spots are defensively, but Christian, is there any other place at offense that you would look at that you'd be curious to see a breakout performance?
Nothing. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is maybe running back. Other than, what's your thoughts on running back, man? I want to see them have a really good game. I think when it comes to the rush, the O line steps up, and I could talk about the O line all day long. We've seen it good, we've seen it bad, we've seen it up and down. But when it's on a good day, it helps the run game a little bit. And when I look at this game for Mississippi State, you know, are they going to be a team that wants to run the ball a lot in this game, or do they want to air it out? Either way, when you are running the football, you have a couple different guys on that roster. Obviously, Fluff and Devon Booth, and you could go deeper in the depth chart with Johnny Daniels, Seth Davis. I'm trying to think, Guyton, Xavier Guyton. But I've always been a guy that's been big when it comes to offense. I've been huge on the RPO and the hard hitting running backs, the fullback type stuff. You know, just I just want to see, can they run the football effectively in this game? And look, if it doesn't work and you just got to stick to the passing game and it's what helps, cool, no problem there. But you know, with everybody being so pass heavy nowadays in college football, you look at it going into this game against Wake Forest, and it's like, is there going to be a point, even if you're up big or something, are they going to be able to take away the passing game? And if so, do you have a run game to rely on?
Well, in the running back room, I mean, look, there are going to be opportunities in this game, and Devon Booth is not going to play. He's opting out of this one. Obviously, Johnny Daniels hit the portal, but Daniels didn't play since early season. Xavier Gaden, a lot of people are going to have their eyes on him. He has announced he will be back for state next season. Probably didn't have the type of year he was hoping for. 24 carries for 149 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's a guy that I think there were expectations for a bigger step forward this year because of the explosive capability that he has. But I know, took some lumps throughout the season, but did see some playing time throughout the season. Had to play with Booth being out at various points. It's a big opportunity for him to make a statement. It's an opportunity for Fluff Bothwell as well. And Fluff Bothwell is going to be back. And I know everybody's fully confident in what State has in Fluff Bothwell, as they should. But I would point out, after Bothwell's injury, his last few games, 12 carries for 25 yards against Arkansas, 9 carries for 44 yards against Georgia, 6 carries for 25 yards against Missouri, 17 carries for 80 yards against Ole Miss. But if you remember, about 40 of that came on one run. So other than that, he was averaging about 2 yards per carry. He didn't have a great close to the season. A lot of that was the offensive line in front of him, but he also didn't fully look up to speed. So I would love to see Fluff Bothwell, after having this whole month to prepare and get ready, can he go out and have a big game and kind of get some momentum going to the offseason, look more like the player we saw early in the year? Can he get in the end zone? He hasn't had a touchdown since I guess it would be the Tennessee game, if I'm right. Yeah, he scored twice. His best game of the year was 23 carries for 134 yards, 2 touchdowns against Tennessee. Was awesome in that game. Rest of the year just was not able to get much going. So would certainly love to see him have a big performance as well. So running back will be a spot to look at. Can you somebody step up alongside Bothwell, and can Bothwell have a really nice game going into the offseason? Defensively, I'm looking at the defensive front, and I've got 2 guys. One is a guy who played a lot and had a solid season for State. That's Jere Bledsoe at defensive line. And look, he was a pretty good player for Mississippi State this year as the transfer out of Texas. 26 tackles, which was the most among defensive linemen, 5.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. He had a solid year. I want to see if he can go out and be a game wrecker. Can he go have a big dominant performance against Wake Forest, his offensive line, and give State some momentum about having a big-time player there in the middle of the defense? Bulldog, Mississippi, I forgot to answer your other question, but first, is Booth entering the draft? Yes, Devon Booth is done, but he's out of college eligibility. He doesn't have another year, and he is prepping for the NFL. Your Brennan Thompson question, officially does not have another year of eligibility. Could apply for a waiver. If he did, it would get denied. However, there's a whole big discussion right now over whether or not they're going to pass players having 5 years of eligibility. Like take 5 years to play 5 would be what gets moved to. And if that were to happen and get passed, Brennan would then be eligible to come back. He may also, if he wanted to, could kind of go the Pavia route and pull a lawsuit move and say, like, hey, because I think this got brought up on somewhere else that like he could have an argument over the percentage of snaps that he actually played. He had a year where he played in like as a freshman, he played in like 9 games at Texas, but like really didn't actually see action all that much. So it's kind of like, should that count against you from a red shirt? I think that's his argument. I wouldn't feel great about getting him back. That's not me knowing anything. That's just me. Like, I would be surprised if State has Brendan Thompson back next year, but you would certainly love to get him back if that could happen. But back talking about the defense with Jere Bledsoe, and this could be any interior defensive lineman, but I want to see somebody be a game wrecker up front and just make it really difficult on that Wake Forest offensive line to get much push. Then at defensive end, and more, not even defensive end, this is the edge rush stand-up linebacker spot. A name that I'm interested in because State is losing their top guys there. Malik Silla is going to be done out of eligibility. Did he not even have a single tackle for loss this year, which is crazy? Yeah, Brandon Jennings did not have a tackle for loss, which is so crazy. But Brandon Jennings obviously also at that spot. So that's a significant loss for Mississippi State. It really didn't have any other guys play in that role, in that stand-up edge rush role. Tyshawn Willis is someone that coming into the season, 4-star signee, I believe the top signee in the class. He might have been ranked ahead of Camario by some services. Someone that was talked about as a potential instant impact player for Mississippi State as an edge rusher. Coming up from, he played, it was 1A football, so big step forward. But that's someone that there was a lot of hype in coming out in this high school class. Didn't play at all this season. Did not see action in any of the games. I was checking with someone who I think would be in the know. They have not heard anything about him being banged up, and it was merely just a redshirt thing, and they felt he was someone that needed some development, needed to put on weight. I think this is an opportunity, man. Like, assuming he's healthy, assuming he's able to go, get him action in this bowl game. Let him go out there and see if he can just go get after the quarterback. See if you got a guy who's got that raw talent ability to rush off the edge. Can you go get after the quarterback? Can you see that from him in this game? Again, I don't know if he's available, going to be able to play. They may not, even if he could play, maybe they don't put him out there. They feel they got other guys they want to lean on. But I would love to see him get some opportunities just because I'm curious, what does State have there? Because, man, generating pressure has been such a big problem for State defensively. They've not had guys been able to do that. They've not had a consistent pass rusher off the edge now for the past few seasons. If Tyshawn Willis could start to show he is capable of being that guy, and I don't care, look, he could go out and have 3 sacks in this game. It doesn't mean State does not also need to go out and add multiple pass rushers in the portal. They still do. But if you could go out and have a big game, that gives you a lot of hope going into this next year. Christian, what are some of your thoughts, defense? Maybe on either the guys I talked about, or are there other positions you're looking at you're curious to see if anybody breaks out?
Nothing at the top of my head other than I hope to see a really good performance from some of our linebackers. Just good pass breakup, good pass defense overall, because I think they're definitely going to need that. And overall, I think we're looking at what could be. I mean, look, if everybody gives it everything they got, and if State kicks it up a notch, and if they've been practicing as hard as they possibly can, I'm not saying they're going to be top of the world defense, we're back type stuff, but this could be one of your more impressive defensive games for Mississippi State, I think. And ultimately, for me, it's like, I just want to see some guys break out. As far as maybe some guys that could, uh, I mean, obviously we know about guys like Brian Lanier, but you know, I don't know. It's so hard for me to come up with like I know who's played a little bit, but like I mean, could you see guys like Darion Gillette out there, Malik Celia? I don't even have injuries in front of me, so I don't know who's healthy or who's not, if I'm being honest. So I mean, if you want to help me out here, Andrew.
Well, I mean, Gillette, has played throughout the season. So, I mean, that's someone that I would like to see somebody at linebacker have a big game. You mentioned Lanier, and like this is gonna be his final game. He's a senior, he's done.
Yeah.
But the safety spot is interesting because you're losing three of your top contributors. Basically, you're losing four of your top five at safety because O'Neal graduating, Hunter Washington graduating, uh, Jerron Manning graduating. We think, I know we talked a lot about, I think it was the last episode or maybe the episode before, there's the potential of could Jerron Manning get another year of eligibility come back? And if he could, that would be great because then you're talking about a really experienced, good player on the back end of the defense. I'm hoping this is not it for Jerron Manning, and he's going to be looking for another year of eligibility. That'd be great for the defense if you could get him back, but potentially losing him. Isaac Smith is not playing in this game. He's getting surgery. Tony Mitchell is in the transfer portal. Tyler Woodard also in the transfer portal. So, which he didn't play as much this year, but you don't have a lot of options. Stonka Burnside in the transfer portal.
Yep.
You don't have a lot of options at safety. You're going to have three guys who have played a lot of football that you could run out there. I don't know who would step into Isaac Smith's role, how they choose to handle that, because it's a different position and a kind of a unique spot. Because again, and Tony Mitchell was his backup, so you have both your guys who would have played that role are not available in this game. I don't know how they choose to handle that. You've got a top safety rotation though that I think you mostly feel fine about. Is there anyone beyond that who could step in and have a good game? I mean, Tanner Johnson played some early in the year. I mean, played throughout the season. Maybe he could make a play. Could there be a young guy in the group like La'Kavian Jackson hit the portal, so like a Siku Smith Jr., Cyrus Reyes, Boogie Johnson, Vic Sutton. Could one of those guys contribute at safety? We'll see. And look, if you get one of those guys who you're not really seeing this year step in and have a big game, that'd be huge because then you start to feel a little bit better about that spot next season when it does feel like you're losing a lot there. But that'll definitely be something to watch for sure when you talk about states safeties. That'll do it for Bowl Talk. I do know, though, Christian had one other thing we wanted to talk about. He thought we'd bring back some predictions. I'll let you take the lead. Let's talk about the college football playoff.
Yeah, I figured we have some fun, kind of mix it up a little bit. Obviously, we talk a lot about Mississippi State, but what good is the voice of college football without the college football playoff bracket? I'm going to just call these games out, and I say we just kind of rapid fire through them quickly, but I say we look at these quarterfinals, Andrew. Obviously, we'll get things started on, I guess, December 31st with Ohio State and Miami. A lot of people don't think that that could be a good game. I beg to differ. I do think Ohio State's going to win. The spread's 9.5, but what's your thoughts on a game like that in the Cotton Bowl?
Ohio State. I just think top to bottom, they're too good of a team. I like Miami fine. I think Miami's got the play on offensive line and defensive line to be able to compete. I think if you've got the players in the trenches, that's going to be enough. But I think Ohio State's got a big edge at quarterback. I think they got a big edge at receiver, which both matters. They got an edge in the secondary, which is going to be a big thing as well. So, yeah, I think trench play keeps Miami in this thing and not lets it become a blowout. Skill talent is where the big difference is, and I think Miami has a pretty big disadvantage there. So, I will say there's an Ohio State fan on social media who is talking about like everything I've seen, like people believe are doubting the Buckeyes. College football fans have got to stop this victim mentality of like assuming everyone is doubting your team and finding ways to convince yourself you're the underdog. Have some self-respect and some self-awareness. Stop trying to one or two guys said it, so therefore everyone just doubts our team. Please stop. Like, I know why football players do it, and coaches do it, although it annoys me when they do it too. They're the actual ones on the field. They're trying to find anything they possibly can to get an extra ounce of motivation. I don't think you should have to go find the extra motivation. I think just go out and play, but that's a thing athletes want to do. Fine. If you're a fan, stop looking for bulletin board material and creating it when it's nowhere to be found. But regardless, I think Ohio State wins the football game.
For sure. Let's go to the SEC. We got a pretty interesting one here. Georgia, Ole Miss. I only laugh because it's Mississippi State's channel, but I got Georgia in that one. And again, I'm kind of picking these without picking scores here, but 6.5 point favorites. Georgia looked really good in the SEC title game, blew out my Crimson Tide. I can see a scenario. I liked Ole Miss and how they were coached up against Tulane, but trying to compare Tulane to Georgia is like comparing, a broke down Chevy to like a Ferrari. You know what I'm saying? So, um, I got Georgia in that one, but I could see Ole Miss making this a very fun offensive game. Maybe in the 30s somewhere.
Georgia. Ole Miss gave up 421 yards of offense to Tulane. The Ole
Right.
Miss defense is not good, and Georgia
Oh, I
already
know.
lit up that defense once this year. If Tulane was competent, they put more points on the board. Georgia's not going to make the same mistakes Tulane did. Georgia will have no problem moving the football, putting points on the board. Other side of the ball, yeah, Ole Miss did really good against Georgia through 3 quarters. Fourth quarter, Georgia finally got it together and shut down that offense. We have seen Kirby Smart this year as games go along, and Glenn Schumann. I don't want to just give it all to Kirby Smart. Glenn Schumann is DC. As games progress, their defenses get better, and they figure things out over the course of a game. And once they've kind of taken that first few blows from you, and look, Ole Miss, it was 5 straight touchdown drives to open the game. I'm not trying to take that away from the Rebels. But after they've kind of figured out what you're doing and get settled in, they tend to stop you. Alabama saw this in both games, technically, because Alabama, the first matchup against Georgia, 24 first half points, shut out in the second half. They won the game. They were able to hold on and get the win, but the offense did nothing in the second half. And then what happened when Alabama played Georgia and Atlanta? As Christian talked about, they got shut down. The offense could not do anything against Georgia. It's not that Alabama doesn't have an offense with good players. It's that Georgia, with Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart, if they know what you're throwing at them, they find ways to adjust and get a stop. I think Georgia's going to have an outstanding game plan for limiting Ole Miss. I'm sure Ole Miss will probably put points on the board in their first couple drives because they just do that. They're really good at scripting stuff to open up the game. But once they have to start getting into their base stuff, I think Georgia's going to have plenty of answers for it. I take the Bulldogs.
I take the Bulldogs too. I feel like even though Ole Miss, here's the weird. It's so weird though because you're going into it with Pete Golding, right? I mean, he's officially the head coach right now. Like he's coaching this game and everything. Okay, so you kind of flip the script a little bit for Ole Miss because you go from Lane Train to Golding, who Alabama fans were wanting fired and run out of town and burn his house down and all that crap. I mean, anyway, I think that's what's going to make the game interesting is how they're going to look there against an SEC team like Georgia. But I don't really expect it to be much of a game. I got the dogs. Let's do the Rose Bowl last. Let's talk about this next one here with Oregon and Texas Tech. I'm gonna go ahead and say that I got Oregon in a really good one, only because when it comes to defense, I trust the Ducks. But I think both teams look really, really good. It does favor Texas Tech. This is the Orange Bowl, the first game on New Year's Day to get us started. I will say Byron Morton has looked really phenomenal. So has Dante Moore for Oregon. But um, I think when you look at, I trust the run game of the Texas Tech Red Raiders. However, I really like, um, I really like the Ducks defense here. I'm going to go Oregon.
A Ducks defense that gave up 509 yards to James Madison.
That is true.
Oregon's defense has been good most of the year. Really, it's a
Right.
weird deal that they gave up. I bet I kind of know why that happened. I mean, they definitely went into that game knowing we're going to win and we're just going to get through it. I don't know. I think this
True.
is probably going to end up being the best game because I think these are two very evenly matched teams. And I'll be honest, I don't have a great feel on it one way or another. Oregon offensively has against good defenses has not been great this year. They did run it a lot on Iowa, surprisingly enough. But I mean, Indiana really shut them down. Texas Tech's defense. If you're someone who is Bulldog Mississippi saying I don't need a reason to pick Georgia, I picked Tulane last week. Um, if you're someone who's a state fan listening who has not watched Texas Tech this year, and you're just assuming, oh, classic Texas Tech air raid. Every game's a shootout. Their defense is better than their offense.
Mm-hmm.
Like their defensive line is dominant. They've got good players at all three levels. I think his name's Jacob Rodriguez is the linebacker. And then, in the secondary, a familiar name to Bulldog fans, Bryce Pollock at corners had a great season. But the defensive line has been really, really good. I can't believe I'm blanking on the kids' names right now. It's not the right thing. David Bailey, Romello Height as sort of the two guys there rushing off the edge. Lee Hunter as an interior defensive lineman has been dominant. Like they have a big-time defensive line that'll be able to challenge Oregon for sure. Offensively, it's been a bit more inconsistent for the Red Raiders. Oregon has had some injury concerns, though, at receiver. They're going to be back, fully locked in, ready to go. I'm going to take the Red Raiders. Why not?
Okay. And again, I could see this either way. I just, man, I don't know. I could really see it either way. Like that's probably like I was saying. We'll fix it to get into like the Rose Bowl and everything, but man, this Orange Bowl could set up to be probably one of the better playoff games we've had. And we've had a lot of blowouts and stuff. We've only had a handful of down to the wire close games, since we've had the CFP, but it could shape up to be one of the better ones, I think.
Certainly.
I guess the only one left is Alabama, Indiana in the Rose Bowl, and I would love to sit here and hype up my Crimson Tide and say that they are going to no doubt win this game. I'm not all that confident. I understand I want them to win, but man, Indiana is just that team on a mission. Like I got freaking Joe Burrow LSU vibes right now going into this game with Mendoza in Indiana. I mean, does it not seem like that? I mean, you got a Heisman winner.
I'm not giving him that.
Well, I'm not gonna say he's like as good. I'm just saying it's like you have the Heisman winner. You got a team on a mission. They've won every single game so far. They've got everything in front of them. They know it, and everybody on planet Earth knows it. But also you got a red hot Alabama that's coming in that came off a pretty good victory over Oklahoma, who they lost back to back years against. So, I mean, I guess the big question for me in this game is which Bama is going to show up. And if the right Bama that needs to win this game with four-quarter defense, Ty Simpson on his A game with Ryan Williams and company, I mean, is it still going to be enough to win this Rose Bowl? I don't know. How do you feel?
I lean Indiana.
Right.
Which, look, I leaned Oklahoma. So, I mean, I was wrong there. Look, I think the big thing for me is, and we kind of talked about this going into the Oklahoma game. We saw it to an extent. I don't trust this Alabama offense against Indiana's defense. Indiana's been absolutely dominant defensively. It's a great defensive line. It's a great secondary. They're great against the run. They're not dominant against the pass, but I think they got a better secondary than Oklahoma. And the big thing with the Sooners that we kind of saw is Oklahoma can create a lot of confusion up front. And if they're able to generate pressure and, obviously, like you can't run on them well. So it comes down to your quarterback having to be able to work through things and make the plays while avoiding pass rush. But if you can do that, you can kind of throw on Oklahoma a little bit this year. Like the good offenses that had good quarterbacks, good receivers threw on Oklahoma this season. They were able to throw the football. And Bama was able to do that in both games. And ultimately, Bama got settled in after the big drive down the field and after the block punt. Bama really settled in offensively in that game against Oklahoma the second time. And Ty Simpson played a much, much better game. Well, I think Indiana can do a lot of the same stuff up front with their defensive line. They've got a very good defensive line and do a good job of creating confusion up front. I think they got better pieces in the secondary to match up with what Bama has at receiver.
True.
And look, Bama's receiving core is loaded. I mean, you talked about Ryan Williams. He's been like the fourth best receiver on the team, frankly, compared to some of the other guys. Like it's a very talented receiving group. But I think Indiana can match up a little bit better on the back end. Bama's not going to be able to run the football on them. Bama's not been able to run the football all year. That's not changing in this game. So it becomes like Ty Simpson is going to have to put the team on his back and make plays with his arms. I like Ty Simpson a lot. I think he looked a lot better in the second half against Oklahoma, looked more like the player we saw early in the season. I think Indiana's defense is another step up from OU's in terms of the way they're able to challenge you. So I don't love that matchup. Other side of the ball, look, I would expect Bama's defense to be able to make some plays. But at the end of the day, I think Indiana might be the most complete offense Bama has seen this year, to be completely honest. Like, Fernando Mendoza has been outstanding at quarterback. They've got weapons at receiver. They've got a strong run game. They got a strong offensive line. I don't know if they have faced another team that is as complete offensively top to bottom as what Indiana's going to be able to throw at them. I don't think Indiana's going to go have a huge day, but do I think Indiana can score between 24 and 28 points in this game? I think they probably can. And do I think they can hold Bama below that number? I tend to think they can. So I'm going to take the Hoosiers. We'll see. I won't be surprised if Alabama wins, if Bama continues to put it together, if the defense plays well, if Simpson gets rolling in this game, then if Ty Simpson has a big game in this one, and we're assuming the defense does enough and doesn't give up a ton to Indiana, at that point, then I'm thinking Bama could legitimately win the national championship. Not just because it's like, well, no duh, they've won 2 playoff games at that point. But if you're telling me we're getting the best version of Ty Simpson plus a strong defense, okay, now I'm buying into Alabama. But I've got to see it in this game before I fully change my tune on them.
No doubt, man. I would love nothing more. Like, I'll be watching this game on New Year's. I'll be pulling for Bama big time. My pick right now, man, I'm telling you, Indiana is just that team on a mission, man. Like, I just don't know. I feel like their defense is a little bit more physical than Alabama's offensive line. Even though I have seen, we saw really good improvement on the O-line against Oklahoma in the playoffs. And, I think the big thing for Alabama, final words here, is how can they carry what they did against the Sooners in Norman into this Rose Bowl against a team that's probably going to give it their all, just like they have all year long? That's crazy to me. Like, I mean, I'd be shocked if it's a big blowout, but at the same time, man, as much as I want them to win, it's tough to call.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
All right. That's going to do it for us tonight. We will be back Friday night after the bowl game, so some late night recap, instant reaction to whatever happens for Mississippi State against Wake Forest in the Mayo Bowl. We'll give our final thoughts on – well, I guess it won't be our true final thoughts of the season. We'll put a complete bow on things afterwards. But whatever happened in the Mayo Bowl, we'll break it all down, and then it's going to be full-on off-season content, which, hey, maybe some basketball talk as well. MSU men's basketball getting the win just now wrapped up against North Alabama, blowout win. We'll see if things start to turn for them in conference play. I know the women's team has been outstanding to this point. Won't be that much longer until baseball. I mean, we're 2 months away at this point for looking at the baseball season. So plenty of stuff that we'll be able to get into, obviously, but with football, the offseason, the transfer portal, continued coaching staff news, we're going to have a lot to hit on as well. If you haven't already, please leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on so you do know when we do go live. As always, swing your sword, Hail State, and Happy New Year.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.